Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a look at how to improve readability in your applications. And this is something that I believe is really important because as engineers, we write a lot of code, and that code can either be formatted nicely and be readable and legible for other human beings, or it can be the complete opposite. It can be a mess to read and it can be hard to understand what's going on. And for me, it's a no-brainer. We need to be able to write code that other people can understand. Otherwise, we are just doing our job poorly. And it's not even other people in some scenarios. Sometimes you come back to code you written 2-3 weeks ago, and it's sometimes difficult to understand what you were thinking at the time and why your code is structured the way it is. So to me, readability is the hallmark of the great engineer. The great engineer is capable of writing really complex code in a way that's understandable and easy to read for other people. So do yourself a favor, do your teammates a favor, have focus on writing as clean code as possible, make it as readable as possible, because at the end of the day, the machine doesn't really care about how your code looks or if you saved some characters here and there, but your teammates will. So we're going to look at this from the perspective of a React application, but the concepts here will be applicable to any other framework and even vanilla JS. So without further ado, let's just jump into it and get started. So I have an application in front of me here, and what we'll focus on today is actually one simple trick, and that is how to make your app a lot more readable by handling conditional rendering. Because conditional rendering is where you often introduce more complex logic, and you have to convey that in a manner that's easy to understand. Now, in this application right here, which is a fairly simple example, we have some conditional rendering here. So if you're logged in, we show a div that says that you're logged in. Otherwise, we show a button that says login. And then if we scroll a little bit further down, we have another conditional render, which is, are you logged in? And then we have a nested conditional, which is checking whether or not you've done some purchases. Now, this quickly gets out of hand, and to be honest, my eyes kind of already are struggling to understand what's going on, what's being showed when these conditions are true or not. And you could easily have a scenario where you have more deeply nested conditionals in more complex applications. So already in this simple example, this is really painful to work with, and you have a lot of cognitive load where you have to figure out what's going on, and that's not good. We need to tackle this in another way. So we're going to refactor this and take a look at how it looks after we've refactored. And then once we've done that, we are going to create the component that we're going to use here in order to make this look a lot nicer. So we're going to start by importing a component that we've created here called conditional render. And basically this is a React component that handles some of this logic for us. And it's going to make it a lot easier for us to understand what's going on. So let's take this first example here. So we'll say, use this component. And if you're logged in, we'll say condition, logged in. And if you're logged in, we want to show this div. And if that condition is false, we are going to show this button. And then we'll delete the rest of this conditional and we'll hit save. So now we have this here. And to me, it's a lot more legible already. So I can see here, all right, so the condition is logged in. If I'm logged in, I'm showing this. Otherwise, I'm showing this. Perfect. So let's go down and we'll take a look at this nested conditional and we'll see how this can be made better as well. And we'll start by using this component and we'll say condition logged in. And if we're logged in, we'll show this. And otherwise, we'll show the please log in to continue here. And then we'll get rid of this. That's step 1. Step 2 is handling this conditional inside of here. So we'll nest this with a nested component. And we'll say condition purchase. And then we'll do show. And we'll copy this div here. And otherwise, what we'll show is you haven't made any purchases yet. And then we'll remove this here. All right. So let's take a look at what we have now. This component, to me, is looking a lot better. It's a lot more readable. I can more easily understand what's going on. And I could nest these. I wouldn't do it, but I could nest these 4 or 5 more times. And I should still be able to easily understand what's going on. Because this is so much more human readable, so to speak. And let's take a look at this condition down here. And even though it's nested, I mean, you can easily see what's going on here. Let's see. Type number, yeah, that should fix it. So here we are saying that if you're logged in, we'll show this conditional render. And this is saying if you have any purchases, then we show this component. So to me, this basically made this component 95% more readable. And I would encourage you to look into this as well. And if you liked it, now we are going to check out how you can create this component on your own. Okay, so let's see how we can create this conditionally render component. And what I'll do is I'll take the one I already created and I'll rename it to v1. And I'll do the same thing with the folder. And we'll get started with a fresh component. So we'll create a new folder called conditionally render. And inside of that, we'll create a new file called conditionally render tsx. And then we'll create the component. And for now, what we'll do is we'll return null and we'll export it as default. All right, and the first thing we'll do is we'll create an interface for this component. And the interface is just going to tell us what this component is going to expect as parameters. So we'll call that I conditionally render props. And the I is just a convention I typically use for interface. And what we'll do is we'll say, if we go back to our app.tsx file, we are expecting these 3 properties to be set, but else show might be optional. We'll see. So what we need to do is we need to say that we need a condition, and that's going to be a Boolean. And then we want to have a show property, and that's going to be a JSX element, or we'll accept something we'll call a render func. And then we'll have an optional else show property, which is going to be an element or a render func as well. And then we'll create this render func type. And that's going to be a function that returns a JSX element. Okay, so let's think about what we want to do here now. So in essence, we want to accept the condition, the show, and the else show parameters, and we'll type that as the interface that we created. And in its simplest form, we want to do if the condition is true, we'll return the show, and if the condition is false and we have an else show property, then we'll return else show. But what we've done now is we've said that it can be a JSX element, but it can also be a function that returns a JSX element. So we need to handle that as well. So if it is a function, we want to call the function and return the result. So let's go ahead and create a helper function here called isFunc. And that's going to take a param. And the param is going to be a JSX element or a render func. And then we'll just return type of param equals function. So if that's true, we know it's a function. So inside of this condition here now, what we want to do is we want to do if isFunc, and then we'll give it the show property. Then we want to return the result of calling show. So let's go ahead and create a helper function for that as well, and we'll say handle function, and that's going to be show as render func. And we need to create this handle function up here, so that's going to be taking in a render func. And we know that that's a function that returns a JSX element. So we'll say result is the result of calling render func. Now we'll do a check here just in case someone forgot to return something. TypeScript should catch that, but in case someone uses this component without TypeScript, we want to make sure that we give a warning. So if there's no result, we'll go console warn, and we'll say nothing was returned from your render function. Please make sure you are returning a valid React element. And then we'll return null from here. And if all goes well, we'll return the result. And then we need to handle this case down here as well, because else show can also be a function. So if isFunc else show will return handle function with else show as render func. And that's it. So now this function or this component should be able to accept a condition, which is a Boolean, a show, that's either a JSX element or a render function, and an optional else show that is also a JSX element or a render function. So that's it. Now we have this functionality in place, and we can use it exactly in the manner that I showed you before. All right, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please comment down below and leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike and tell me what I can improve. If you don't want to build this functionality yourself, it's available on NPM as a TypeScript-ready package that you can include in your project. just look up React conditionally render, and you should be able to install that with Yarn or NPM if you prefer that. So thanks a lot for tuning back in, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.